The encrypted radio crackled one final time before dying completely. 6 Navy SEALs sat frozen in the abandoned Norwegian fishing hut, staring at the GPS screen that had shown their commander's beacon for 12 hours straight. Now it displayed nothing but darkness. Master Chief Daniel Torres pressed his forehead against the cold metal of his rifle and whispered the words no SEAL ever wanted to say. Commander Webb is gone. But 300 meters away, hidden in the howling Arctic blizzard, a small figure was already moving. The legendary sniper they called Spectre had made her choice. She was going to bring him back, or die trying. If you want to see how one woman defied impossible odds, subscribe to this channel and follow this story until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind screamed across the Norwegian fjords at 60 miles per hour, carrying ice crystals that cut exposed skin like tiny razors. Inside the abandoned fishing hut, 6 Navy SEALs had been listening to static for 3 hours straight. Master Chief Daniel Torres pressed the radio transmission button for the 47th time. His voice was steady, but the men around him could hear the cracks forming underneath. Base, this is Viper 6. Status update on Commander Webb's beacon. We have lost all GPS signal for 12 hours. Requesting satellite repositioning for search operations. Over. The response came through broken and distant. Viper 6, this is Base. Negative on satellite repositioning. Storm interference too severe. Current weather assessment shows conditions deteriorating. You are authorized to mark Commander Webb as MIA, presumed KIA. Extraction helicopter will reach your position in 36 hours when weather permits. Base out. Torres didn't move. His hand stayed on the radio, like a man holding on to the edge of a cliff. Senior Chief Robert Harrington stood up slowly. At 44 years old, he had spent 22 years in naval special warfare. He had buried friends. He had written letters to widows. He had made the hard calls when commanders couldn't. Torres, he said quietly, you heard them. I heard them, Bull. Doesn't mean I accept it. Commander Webb went into that ambush covering our extraction. That was 18 hours ago. Temperature out there is -40. Even if he survived the initial contact, even if the Russians didn't finish him, don't. Torres finally released the radio and turned to face his team. 6 men, 6 of America's most elite warriors, and not one of them could meet his eyes. Petty Officer Kyle Morrison, they called him Tex, was the first to break the silence. He was 31 years old, built like a linebacker, with a voice that carried across any room.
Master Chief, I hate this as much as anyone, but we need to start thinking about our own extraction. Storm's getting worse. If we don't move to the primary extraction point in the next 12 hours, we might miss our window.
So we just leave him?
We leave his body. There's a difference.
Torres moved so fast that Tex barely had time to react. The Master Chief's hand closed around Tex's tactical vest, pulling him forward until their faces were inches apart. You want to say that again? Torres. Bull Harrington's voice cut through like a blade. Stand down. He's not wrong. You know he's not wrong. Torres held Tex for another 3 seconds, then released him with a shove. The big operator stumbled back, but kept his mouth shut. Commander Webb has a wife, Torres said. He has a daughter serving in the Air Force. He has 30 years of service to this country. And you want me to mark him as presumed dead based on a GPS signal? Based on reality, Bull said. Based on physics. Based on the fact that no human being survives 18 hours in these conditions without shelter, without heat, without medical attention. We don't know he's without shelter. We don't know anything. That's the problem. In the corner of the hut, partially hidden in shadow, Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez sat cross-legged on the frozen wooden floor.
Her SR-25 sniper rifle lay disassembled before her, each component being methodically cleaned, despite having been stored in a waterproof case since the storm began. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, but her eyes were fixed on the map spread across her lap. She had been calculating. For 3 hours, she had been running numbers in her head. Distance, temperature, wind speed, enemy patrol patterns based on the intercepted radio traffic. Probability of survival, probability of capture. The numbers didn't work. Everyone in this room knew the numbers didn't work. But Elena Vasquez had stopped believing in numbers a long time ago. Spectre. She looked up. Bull Harrington was standing over her, his weathered face tight with concern. "You've been quiet." "I've been thinking." "About?" "About how we're all sitting here, talking about extraction, while Commander Webb might still be alive." Tex made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a grunt. "Here we go." "You have something to say, Tex?" "Yeah, I do." He stepped forward, crossing his massive arms over his chest. "I've been watching you sit in that corner for 3 hours, playing with your rifle like it's some kind of therapy session. You want to tell me what good a sniper does in a situation like this?" "Tex," Bull warned. "No, let me finish. We're SEALs. We operate as a team. We don't do solo rescue missions into hostile territory during Arctic storms. That's not tactics. That's suicide with extra steps." Elena set down the rifle component she was holding. When she spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. "You're right," Tex blinked. "I'm what?" "You're right. The numbers don't work. One operator, alone, in these conditions, against an unknown number of hostiles, with no support and no extraction plan? That's not a mission. That's a death sentence." "Finally, some sense." "But my father taught me something when I was 9 years old." Elena stood up slowly. At 5'3", she barely reached Tex's shoulder. "He taught me that numbers don't save people. People save people." She picked up her rifle and began reassembling it with movements so fluid they seemed unconscious. "Your father?" Tex's voice dripped with condescension. "What was he, some kind of philosopher?" "He was a border patrol agent. He died protecting witnesses from a cartel ambush when I was 13. She slid the last component into place with a soft click. Before that, he pulled 12 migrants out of a flash flood in the middle of the night. The water was rising so fast that his supervisor ordered him to fall back. He went in anyway. And he saved them, all 12, because he understood something that the numbers never could. Torres had turned to watch her. So had the rest of the team. "What's that?" the Master Chief asked quietly. Elena met his eyes. "That when someone needs help, you help them. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care how scared you are. I don't care how impossible it seems. You go." The wind howled outside, rattling the hut's thin walls. "Spectre," Bull said carefully, "I respect what you're saying. I respect your father's memory. But this isn't a flash flood in Texas. This is enemy territory. We intercepted Russian communications 3 hours ago. They have patrols all over these mountains." "I know. They mentioned a high-value American target. They're looking for him, too." "I know. If they find him before we do, if they haven't already, he'll be taken to a black site for interrogation, and there won't be anything any of us can do about it." Elena finished checking her rifle and slung it across her back. Then she began packing her kit with methodical precision. Extra ammunition, medical supplies, emergency rations, cold weather gear. "What are you doing?" Torres asked. "What does it look like?" "It looks like you're preparing for a solo mission that I haven't authorized." "Then authorize it." "Spectre, Master Chief." She stopped packing and turned to face him directly. "Commander Webb is out there. He might be dead. He might be captured.
He might be injured and waiting for someone to come get him. But sitting in this hut and waiting for an extraction helicopter isn't going to answer any of those questions. And getting yourself killed will? Maybe, but at least I'll know I tried. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause. Tex was the first to break it. "This is insane. Master Chief, you can't seriously be considering—" "I wasn't asking for permission," Elena said. "You don't get to make that call. Watch me." She moved toward the door, and Tex stepped into her path. He towered over her, 220 pounds of muscle and combat training blocking her way. "Move," Elena said. "Make me." "Tex," Bull's voice was sharp. "Stand down." "Bull, she's going to get herself killed. And for what? For a man who's probably already dead?" "I said stand down." "No." Tex didn't move. "Someone needs to say what everyone's thinking. Spectre's been trying to prove herself since the day she joined this team. She thinks going out there alone makes her a hero. It doesn't. It makes her a liability." Elena tilted her head slightly. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "You think I'm doing this to prove something? Aren't you? You want to know what I'm doing this for, Tex? I'm doing it because Commander Webb has a wife named Sarah who's been married to him for 26 years. I'm doing it because he has a daughter named Michelle who just made captain in the Air Force and calls him every Sunday no matter where he's deployed. I'm doing it because 3 weeks ago, on my birthday, he was the only person on this team who remembered. He gave me a card that said, 'Your father would be proud.'" Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. She caught it and steadied herself. "So no, Tex, I'm not doing this to prove anything. I'm doing this because that man out there, he's the closest thing to a father I've had in 14 years, and I'm not leaving him behind." Tex stared at her. Something shifted in his expression, something that might have been shame. But before he could respond, the radio crackled to life. "American operator, captured. Transport to extraction point Delta." Torres lunged for the radio. "Base, this is Viper 6. Repeat that transmission. Over." Static. Then, faintly. "Intercept confirms Russian mercenary unit has captured American military personnel. High-value target being transported north for extraction. Approximate location." The transmission dissolved into white noise. But they had all heard enough. Commander Webb was alive, and he was being taken. Elena looked at Torres. "Still going to stop me?" Torres ran a hand over his face. He was 41 years old. He had served with Marcus Webb for 15 years. He had been at Webb's daughter's college graduation. He had held Webb's wife when they thought he was dead after a mission in Syria. And now he was being asked to send one of his operators into certain death to save him. "The intercept said they're moving north," he said slowly. "That means they're heading for the coast. Probably have a boat waiting to take him to a black site in Russia." "How long?" Elena asked. "Based on patrol patterns and weather conditions? 12 hours, maybe less." "Then I need to move now." "Elena." It was the first time Torres had used her first name since she joined the team. "If you do this, if you go out there, I can't send anyone with you, not in these conditions, not with our current operational status. You'll be completely alone." "I know. If you get into trouble, we can't extract you." "I know." "If you're captured, I won't be captured." Torres studied her face. 27 years old, 5'3", 118 pounds soaking wet. The youngest member of SEAL Team 5. The smallest. The quietest. And maybe, just maybe, the bravest. "Bull," he said, without looking away from Elena. "What's her range qualification score?" "Perfect marks, Master Chief." Highest in the team. Cold weather survival assessment. Top of her class at SEER school. Instructor noted she has, and I quote, exceptional environmental awareness and adaptation capability. Close quarters combat. She put 3 instructors in the infirmary during her final evaluation. They underestimated her. Torres nodded slowly. How many rounds are you carrying, Spectre? 40 for the rifle, 60 for my sidearm, 2 fragmentation grenades, 1 smoke. Medical kit? Full trauma pack. Hypothermia protocol supplies. Emergency shelter equipment. Communications? Encrypted radio with 12-hour battery. Emergency beacon for extraction. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his vest and pulled out a small object. He held it out to Elena. It was a challenge coin. Commander Webb's challenge coin, given to him when he made SEAL Team 5 commander 8 years ago. The commander left this in my kit before the ambush, Torres said.
He told me to hold on to it for him. Said he had a feeling this mission was going to go sideways.
Elena took the coin. It was warm from Torres's body heat. Bring him back, Torres said. And bring yourself back. That's an order, petty officer. Yes, Master Chief. She turned toward the door. This time, Tex didn't move to stop her. Spectre. She paused. Tex's voice was rough. Commander Webb told me once that you reminded him of his daughter. Same fire, he said. Same stubbornness. He paused. Be careful out there. Elena didn't smile, but something softened in her eyes. Watch my 6, Tex. If I can get the commander to a defensible position, I'll signal for support. Be ready to move. We'll be ready. She pulled up her face covering, adjusted her goggles, and opened the door. The wind hit her like a physical force, driving ice crystals into every exposed inch of skin. She didn't hesitate. She stepped into the storm and disappeared. Behind her, the team watched the darkness swallow their smallest member whole. God help her, Bull muttered. Torres shook his head. God help whoever gets in her way. The cold was immediate and absolute. Within 30 seconds, Elena's face was numb. Within a minute, she could feel the frost forming on her eyelashes. But she had trained for this. She had spent 3 winters in Alaska, learning to move and fight and survive in conditions that would kill an unprepared operator in hours. She checked her compass, oriented herself toward the last known position of the Russian patrol, and began to move. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, a memory from when she was 9 years old, standing on the bank of the Rio Grande as floodwaters raged past. Mija, look at the water. What do you see? It's fast, Papa. Too fast. That's what everyone sees. But look closer. See where the current breaks? See where the water slows down? Just a little bit. That's your path. The river looks impossible, but it always shows you a way through. You just have to know how to look. Elena pushed forward through the blizzard, reading the wind patterns, finding the paths of least resistance. The storm wanted to push her back, wanted to freeze her in place, wanted to bury her in snow. But the storm didn't know who she was. She had been underestimated her entire life. Too small, too quiet, too female. People looked at her and saw someone to protect, someone to dismiss, someone who couldn't possibly survive in a world built for men twice her size. They never saw her coming. That was their mistake. 2 hours into her journey, she found the first sign of enemy activity. Boot prints in the snow, partially filled but still visible. 3 men moving northeast. Standard patrol formation. Elena dropped to one knee and examined the tracks. Fresh, no more than 40 minutes old. The patrol was close. She checked her rifle, chambered around, and followed the trail. The tracks led her through a narrow ravine, then up a steep incline to a ridgeline overlooking a frozen valley. She approached the crest slowly, staying low, using the terrain to mask her silhouette. Voices. Russian. 2 men, maybe 3, talking loudly over the wind. Elena crawled the final few meters on her belly, ignoring the ice seeping through her gear. She reached the ridgeline and peered over. 3 Russian mercenaries. Tactical gear, automatic weapons, night vision equipment. They had stopped to check their radios, frustrated by the interference from the storm. She could take them. 3 shots, 3 kills, before they even knew she was there. But she didn't. Not yet. She needed information first. The American yet? Volkov has him. Transport is holding at the research station until the storm passes. How bad is he hurt? Bad enough. Broken leg, they said. Volkov had to drag him the last kilometer. He'll talk? They always talk.
Give Volkov an hour alone with him, and he'll tell us everything. Elena's jaw tightened. Commander Webb was alive. Injured, but alive. And he was being held at some kind of research station, waiting for transport. She needed to find that station. She needed to find it now. One of the mercenaries turned slightly, and the light from his headlamp illuminated his face. Young, maybe 25. He was laughing at something his companion said, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. For a moment, just a moment, Elena hesitated. These men were enemies. They were mercenaries who had ambushed her team, who had captured her commander, who would torture him for information that could get more Americans killed. But they were also human beings. Sons, maybe brothers, maybe fathers. Her finger rested on the trigger. Her father's voice again. Taking a life is the hardest thing you'll ever do, Mija. It should never be easy. The day it becomes easy is the day you stop being human.
Elena made her choice. 3 shots, 3 bodies falling into the snow, the sound lost in the howling wind. She waited 30 seconds, listening for any response, any sign that the gunfire had been heard. Nothing. She moved down from the ridgeline, approaching the bodies carefully. She checked each one, pulse, pupils, breathing. All dead. Then she searched them. Maps, radio frequencies.
A notation about Station 17 with coordinates that matched a location approximately 8 kilometers northeast. Commander Webb was at Station 17. Elena memorized the coordinates, destroyed the evidence of her presence, and continued her journey. 8 kilometers. In these conditions, with this terrain, that meant 3 to 4 hours of hard travel. She checked her watch. 7 hours until the estimated Russian transport window. She would make it. She had to make it. Because somewhere out there, in an abandoned Soviet research station, Commander Marcus Webb was waiting for someone to come get him. And Elena Vasquez, the ghost, the specter, the legend that was still being written, was not going to let him down. Not today. Not ever. She pushed forward into the storm, her father's badge pressed against her heart beneath 3 layers of tactical gear. "I'm coming, Commander," she whispered into the wind. "Hold on. I'm coming." 3 hours later, Elena lay prone in the snow, watching Station 17 through her rifle scope. The facility was exactly what she'd expected, a relic of the Cold War, designed to withstand Arctic conditions and prying Western eyes. 3 main buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by a perimeter fence that had long since collapsed under decades of snow and neglect. But the Russians had been busy. New generators hummed in the darkness. Fresh tracks crisscrossed the compound, and through the frost-covered windows of the central building, Elena could see movement. She counted 16 hostiles. Standard tactical gear, automatic weapons, night vision equipment. Professional mercenaries, not conscripts. And in the center of the main room, illuminated by harsh overhead lights, a figure sat slumped in a metal chair. Commander Marcus Webb. Even at this distance, Elena could see the damage. His left leg was splinted crudely, the break obviously severe. His face was swollen, bloody. His hands were bound behind his back. But he was alive. He was breathing. And that meant there was still hope. A tall figure moved into her scope's field of view. Broad shoulders, military bearing. A face like carved granite. Viktor Volkov, the Collector. Elena had read his file during the mission briefing. Former Spetsnaz. 15 years of black operations for Russian intelligence. Known for his interrogation techniques and his complete lack of mercy. He was the reason high-value targets disappeared. He was the reason families never got closure. He was the reason men like Commander Webb woke up screaming in the middle of the night. And right now, he was standing over her commanding officer with a knife in his hand. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. Not yet. Not from this distance. Not through this glass. Not with this wind. The shot would be difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. And if she missed, if she gave away her position, Commander Webb would be dead before she could reload. She needed to get closer. She needed to get inside. And she needed to do it before Viktor Volkov ran out of patience. Through the scope, she watched Volkov lean down and say something to Commander Webb. The commander's response was apparently unsatisfactory because Volkov's hand moved in a blur, the knife drawing a thin line across Webb's cheek. The commander didn't scream. He didn't flinch. He just stared at Volkov with the same steady gaze that had intimidated terrorists and politicians alike for 3 decades. That's my commander, Elena thought. That's who I'm fighting for. She began planning her assault. 16 hostiles, 3 buildings, 1 entrance that she could see, probably at least 2 more on the other sides. Generator placement suggested a weakness in the northern section. If she could disable the power, she'd have confusion on her side. But even with perfect execution, the numbers were impossible. 16-1, even for a SEAL, even for a sniper of her caliber, those odds were death. Her radio crackled. Torres's voice, barely audible through the interference. Spectre, position, update. She keyed her transmission. Viper 6, I have eyes on the package. He's alive, but injured. 16 hostiles confirmed. Request immediate backup. The response was fragmented, broken by static. Storm. Cannot. 36 hours. 36 hours. Commander Webb didn't have 36 hours. Volkov was already working on him, already carving pieces away, looking for information. Spectre, abort. That's order. Elena closed her eyes. She could hear her father's voice, overlapping with Torres's static-filled commands. You don't leave people behind. I don't care how tired you are, how scared you are, how impossible it seems. She keyed the radio one final time. Viper 6, I am unable to comply. I am moving to engage. Tell Commander Webb's family he didn't die alone. She switched off the radio. For a long moment, she lay perfectly still, watching the compound, watching the storm, watching the man who was running out of time. Then Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez, Ghost, Spectre, Legend, rose from the snow, checked her rifle, and began her assault. Alone, against 16 enemies, in the middle of an Arctic blizzard. With nothing but her training, her weapons, and the memory of a father who had taught her what it meant to truly save a life. The impossible mission had begun. Elena moved through the darkness like a ghost made flesh. The first guard never saw her coming. He was standing at the corner of the northern building, stamping his feet against the cold, his rifle hanging loose across his chest. She came up behind him so silently that when her knife slid between his ribs, his only sound was a soft exhale, like a man settling into sleep. She lowered his body into the snow and took his radio. 15 remaining. The radio crackled with Russian chatter. Routine check-ins, complaints about the cold, someone asking when Volkov would finish with the American so they could get moving. Elena clipped the radio to her vest and continued toward the generator.
Her father had taught her about generators when she was 10 years old. They had been preparing for hurricane season, and he had shown her exactly where to cut the fuel line, exactly which wires to sever, exactly how to create maximum disruption with minimum effort. Electricity is civilization, mija. Take it away, and people become animals. Scared, confused animals who make mistakes. She found the generator housing and went to work. 30 seconds later, the hum of machinery stuttered, coughed, and died. The compound went dark. Immediately, the radio exploded with panicked voices. Elena didn't understand most of the Russian, but she understood the tone. Confusion. Fear. Exactly what she needed. She moved toward the main building. 2 guards came running around the corner, flashlights cutting wild arcs through the falling snow. They were looking up, looking around, looking everywhere except down at the small figure crouched in the shadows. Elena's rifle whispered twice. Both men dropped. 13 remaining. Inside the main building, she could hear shouting. Volkov's voice cut through the chaos, barking orders in Russian. The man was a professional. He would have his men organized within minutes. Elena didn't have minutes. She reached the side entrance and tested the door. Locked. She pulled a small explosive charge from her kit, placed it against the lock mechanism, and stepped back. The charge detonated with a muffled crack. The door swung open. Elena went in fast and low, her rifle sweeping the corridor. Emergency lighting had kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow. 2 guards at the end of the hallway turned at the sound of the explosion. She shot them both before they could raise their weapons. 11 remaining. The corridor split into 3 directions. Left led deeper into the building. Right led toward what looked like storage areas. Straight ahead, she could hear Volkov's voice, still shouting orders. She went straight. The door at the end of the corridor was reinforced steel, but it stood partially open. Through the gap, Elena could see the main room where Commander Webb was being held. 4 guards had formed a protective perimeter around Volkov. The mercenary commander was standing over Webb, one hand gripping the commander's collar, the other holding a pistol. "Someone is here," Volkov was saying in accented English, apparently for Webb's benefit. "One of your people, yes? Come to rescue their beloved commander?" Webb's voice was weak but steady. "You should run while you still can." Volkov laughed. "Run? From what? Your military cannot operate in this storm. Your rescue helicopters are grounded. Whatever fool has come here alone will die alone. You don't know who you're dealing with. Enlighten me. Her name is Elena Vasquez. She's the best sniper I've ever trained, and right now she's probably listening to every word you're saying." Volkov's smile faltered slightly. He scanned the shadows, his pistol rising. Elena didn't give him time to aim. She kicked the door fully open and fired 4 shots in rapid succession. 3 guards dropped. The 4th managed to dive behind a metal table, returning fire that sparked off the doorframe inches from Elena's head. She rolled left, came up in a crouch, and put 2 rounds through the table. The guard's body slumped sideways. 7 remaining. Volkov had retreated to the far side of the room, using Webb as a human shield. His pistol was pressed against the commander's temple. "Stop!" Volkov shouted. "One more step and I kill him!" Elena stopped. Her rifle was trained on the narrow gap between Webb's head and Volkov's face, but the angle was wrong. Too much movement, too much risk. "Let him go," she said. Volkov's eyes widened slightly as he took in the small figure standing in the doorway. You? You are the legendary sniper? A little girl?" "I'm the one who just killed 9 of your men in under 5 minutes. Let him go,
and I might let you live. Might? The alternative is definitely, as in, I will definitely kill you.
Webb managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. She doesn't bluff, Victor. Trust me on that. Volkov tightened his grip on Webb's collar, pressing the pistol harder against his temple. Your commander seems confident in your abilities. But I wonder, can you shoot me before I pull this trigger? Can you move faster than a bullet? Elena's hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. Her mind was running calculations at lightning speed, measuring angles, distances, wind factors, probability of success. The numbers still didn't work. But then Webb moved. It was slight, almost imperceptible. A shift of his weight, a tensing of his shoulders. 25 years of special operations had taught him how to communicate without words, how to coordinate with teammates through the subtlest of signals. He was telling her something. He was telling her to get ready. Elena adjusted her aim by 2 millimeters. Webb moved. Despite his broken leg, despite his injuries, he threw his body sideways with everything he had left. Volkov's pistol discharged, but Webb was already falling, already clearing the line of fire. Elena squeezed the trigger. The bullet passed through the space where Webb's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. It continued through that space and entered Viktor Volkov's left eye socket, exiting through the back of his skull in a spray of red. The collector fell. Elena was moving before the body hit the ground. She reached Webb in 3 strides, dropping to her knees beside him. "Commander, are you hit?" Webb was gasping, his face contorted in agony from the impact of his fall. But he was smiling, actually smiling. "Ghost," he managed. "You came." "Of course I came. Can you move?" "My leg's broken. Compound fracture. I've lost blood." "I know. We need to go. There are still 6 hostiles in the compound." "Make that 4. The voice came from behind her. Elena spun, her rifle rising, but the speaker was already stepping into the light with his hands raised. It was a young Russian, maybe 20 years old. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. Behind him, another young mercenary stood with the same expression of absolute fear. "Please," the first one said in broken English. "We surrender. We don't want to die." Elena kept her rifle trained on them. "Where are the others?" "Run away. When they hear shooting, they run. Just us left." Webb reached up and touched Elena's arm. "They're telling the truth, Ghost. I've been watching their faces for hours. These 2? They're conscripts. They didn't choose to be here." Elena looked at the young Russians. They were trembling, not from the cold, but from pure fear. They had watched her kill their commander and most of their teammates in less than 10 minutes. They knew exactly what she was capable of. "Drop your weapons," she ordered. They complied instantly, rifles clattering to the floor. "Kick them away." They did. "Now sit down. Hands on your heads. If either of you moves, I will kill you both. Do you understand?" They understood. They sat. Elena turned back to Webb. "We need to move, Commander. I intercepted communications that more forces are coming. We have maybe 2 hours before this place is swarming with Russians. I can't walk, Ghost. My leg won't hold any weight." "I know. I'm going to carry you." Webb stared at her. "Elena, I outweigh you by 70 pounds. 65. I've been studying your physical stats since I joined the team." "That's oddly specific." "I'm a sniper, Commander. Details matter." She began fashioning a makeshift harness from tactical straps, working with the speed and precision that had become second nature through hundreds of training exercises. Webb watched her work, his face a mixture of pain and wonder. "How did you find me?" he asked. "Intercepted patrol communications, followed the trail, did the math." "The math said this mission was impossible."
The math was wrong. Was it? Elena paused in her work and met his eyes. Commander, do you remember what you told me after my first live fire exercise? When I froze up because I couldn't make the shot? I told you that hesitation kills. No, that's what you told me afterward. But in the moment, when I was shaking so badly I couldn't hold my rifle steady, you said something else. You said, "The numbers don't matter, Vasquez. The target doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is who you choose to be in this moment." Webb was quiet for a long moment. I said that? You did. And tonight, I chose to be the person who brings you home. She finished the harness and began the painful process of maneuvering Webb onto her back. He groaned as his broken leg shifted, and Elena felt his blood soaking through her tactical vest, warm against the cold. Commander, I need you to stay conscious. Can you do that? I'll try. Don't try. Do. I need you talking to me the whole way. I need you keeping pressure on your wound. I need you fighting. Yes, ma'am. Despite everything, Elena almost laughed. Did you just ma'am me? You earned it. She stood, adjusting to the weight on her back. 70 pounds, 65, whatever it was significant. Combined with her gear, she was now carrying nearly her own body weight through a blizzard in enemy territory. The math said it was impossible. Elena had stopped listening to the math. She moved toward the door, stepping over Volkov's body without a second glance. The two young Russians watched her go, their hands still on their heads, their eyes filled with something that might have been awe. Those two, Webb said weakly. What happens to them? They surrender to my team when this is over. We'll hand them to NATO intelligence. And if they try to follow us? Try to alert their people? Then they die. But I don't think they will. I think they've seen enough killing for one night. She pushed through the door and back into the corridor. The emergency lights were still casting their red glow, making everything look like it was bathed in blood. Elena moved through the building quickly, checking corners, clearing rooms. Her rifle was slung across her front now, accessible, but not aimed. She needed her hands free to support Webb's weight. They reached the exit where she had entered. The bodies of the guards she had killed were already being covered by fresh snow. Which way? Webb asked. Southeast. My team is holding position 12 kilometers from here. They couldn't come with me because of the storm, but they'll be moving toward us as soon as conditions allow. 12 kilometers? In this weather? With me on your back? Yes. Ghost, that's not a rescue mission, that's a death march. Then I guess we'd better not die. She stepped out into the storm. The wind hit her like a physical blow, staggering her sideways. Webb groaned as the movement jarred his broken leg. Elena caught herself, planted her feet, and pushed forward. One step at a time, that was all she could do. One step, then another, then another. Don't think about the distance. Don't think about the cold. Don't think about the blood she could feel dripping down her back from Webb's wounds. Just move. Ghost! Webb's voice was weaker now. You need to leave me. No. You can move faster alone. You can make it to your team. Bring back help. You'll be dead before I get back. That's not your problem. Elena stopped walking. The wind screamed around her, trying to push her down, trying to bury them both. But she stood firm. Commander, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen very carefully. Can you do that? I'm listening. When I was 13 years old, I stood at my father's funeral and watched them fold the flag. He died saving 5 fishermen from a sinking boat. His helicopter went down, and he knew it was going down. But he wouldn't leave until everyone was safe. The last thing he ever said to his crew was, "We don't leave people behind. Get them to the shore. I'll figure out the rest." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. He didn't figure out the rest.
He died in the Atlantic Ocean because he chose to be the kind of man who saved lives instead of his own skin. And I made a promise at his grave that I would be that kind of person too.
That I would never leave anyone behind. That I would go out, even if I didn't come back. She started walking again, her steps steadier now. So no, Commander, I'm not leaving you. I'm not sending for help while you bleed out in the snow. I'm carrying you 12 kilometers through this storm, and when we get to my team, I'm putting you on a helicopter, and then I'm going home to tell my mother that I finally did something worthy of my father's memory. That's the plan. That's the only plan.
And if you tell me to leave you behind one more time, I swear I will shoot you myself.
Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he laughed. Has anyone ever told you that you're terrifying? My drill instructor, multiple times. He wasn't wrong. Webb's arm tightened around her shoulder, taking some of his weight off her back. Okay, Ghost. We do this your way. But when we get back to base, you're buying me a drink.
Deal.
They pushed on through the storm.
The first hour was the hardest.
Elena's muscles screamed in protest. Her lungs burned from the cold air. Every step felt like the last step she could possibly take. But she kept taking them. Webb talked to her the whole time, just like she'd asked. He told her about his daughter, Michelle, who had just made captain in the Air Force. He told her about his wife, Sarah, who had been with him through 30 years of deployments and missed holidays and middle-of-the-night phone calls. He told her about the first time he'd seen Elena in training, how he'd known immediately that she was something special. You had this look in your eyes, he said, like you were constantly calculating, constantly measuring. But underneath all that analysis, there was something else, something fierce. What was it? Determination. The kind that doesn't quit. The kind that doesn't know how to quit. Elena didn't respond. She just kept walking. Somewhere around the second hour, she realized they were being followed. She didn't stop, didn't look back, but she could feel it. That sixth sense that every sniper developed after enough years in the field. Someone was out there. Someone was tracking them. Commander, she said quietly, we have company. How many? Don't know yet. At least 2, maybe more. Russians? Probably. The ones who ran from the compound. They must have regrouped. Webb's grip on her shoulder tightened. Can you fight? Not while carrying you. Then put me down. No. Ghost, if they catch up to us while you're carrying me, we're both dead. At least this way. I said no. She picked up her pace, ignoring the agony in her legs. The snow was deeper here, sometimes up to her thighs. Each step was a battle against the elements, against exhaustion, against the weight of a man who had become like a father to her. The followers were getting closer. She could hear them now, the crunch of boots on snow, the occasional shout as they coordinated their approach. Ghost! Webb's voice was urgent. There's a ravine ahead. I remember it from the mission maps. If you can get us there, there might be cover. Elena adjusted her course, pushing toward the ravine. Her lungs were on fire. Her vision was starting to blur. But she could see it now. The edge of the ravine, a dark slash in the white landscape, maybe 50 meters away. Behind her, a shot rang out. The bullet whizzed past her ear, close enough that she felt the displaced air. She ran. 50 meters had never felt so far. Every step was an eternity. Every breath was a struggle. The shots kept coming, wild and inaccurate in the storm, but getting closer. 40 meters. 30. 20. Another bullet struck the snow at her feet. She heard shouting behind her, excited voices getting nearer. 10 meters. She reached the edge of the ravine and jumped. For a moment, they were airborne, suspended in the howling wind. Then gravity took over, and they were falling, tumbling, sliding down the steep slope in a chaos of snow and ice and pain. Elena lost her grip on Webb. They separated, rolling in different directions. She hit something hard, maybe a rock, maybe frozen ground, and stars exploded across her vision. When she could see again, she was at the bottom of the ravine. Webb was 10 meters away, not moving. Above them, silhouettes appeared at the edge. 3 figures peering down into the darkness. Elena crawled toward Webb, dragging herself through the snow. Her rifle was still strapped to her chest. She pulled it free, checked the chamber, and aimed at the figures above. The first shot took the lead figure in the chest. He tumbled forward, falling past Elena to land in a heap at the bottom of the ravine. The other 2 scattered, disappearing from view. Elena reached Webb. He was unconscious but breathing. The fall had opened his wounds again, and blood was staining the snow beneath him. She positioned herself between Webb and the ravine walls, her rifle aimed at any possible approach. Her hands were shaking now, partly from cold, partly from exhaustion, partly from the adrenaline that was the only thing keeping her conscious. Above her, she could hear the remaining Russians arguing. They knew she was down here. They knew she was wounded, exhausted, nearly finished. But they also knew she had just killed their point man with a single shot in near-zero visibility during a blizzard. They were afraid. Good. "Come on," Elena whispered, her finger on the trigger. "Come down here. I dare you." The minutes stretched into eternity. The storm raged around her. Webb lay unconscious at her feet, and Elena Vasquez, the ghost who walked through hell, waited for the next battle to begin. She checked her ammunition. 8 rounds left in the rifle, 23 in her sidearm. 1 fragmentation grenade. Enough to make them pay. Maybe enough to survive. Maybe. The Russians still hadn't moved. She could hear them arguing in hushed voices, trying to decide what to do. Come down and face the sniper who had killed so many of their comrades? Or wait for reinforcements that might not arrive in time? Elena used the pause to check Webb's pulse. Weak, but steady. He needed medical attention soon, but he was still fighting. "Hold on, Commander," she murmured. "Just hold on." A sound from above. Footsteps, cautious and slow. One of them was coming down. Elena raised her rifle. The figure appeared around a boulder, moving carefully, his weapon sweeping the darkness. Elena let him get 5 steps closer. Then she fired. The man fell without a sound. 1 left. But the last Russian didn't come. Instead, she heard something else. Something that made her blood run cold. The sound of a snowmobile engine. Then another. And another. Reinforcements had arrived. Elena looked at Webb's unconscious form. She looked at her remaining ammunition. She looked at the ravine walls that had become their prison. The numbers were impossible now. Truly impossible. But she didn't lower her rifle. "Okay, Dad," she whispered to the howling wind. "I went out. I might not come back. But I'm not giving up. Not yet. Not ever." Above her, the snowmobile engines grew louder. Elena Vasquez tightened her grip on her weapon and prepared for her final stand. The snowmobile engines cut through the storm like angry hornets. Elena counted them by sound alone. 4, maybe 5 machines. That meant at least 8 more hostiles, probably more. She had 7 rounds in her rifle, 23 in her sidearm. 1 grenade. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But then a voice crackled through the radio she had taken from the first guard. A voice speaking English. "Spectre, this is Viper 6. Do you copy? Spectre, respond." Elena's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed the radio, her frozen fingers fumbling with the transmission button. Viper 6, this is Spectre. I copy. What's your position? We're on the ridge above you, about 400 meters northeast. We heard the gunfire. Those snowmobiles aren't Russian. Elena looked up at the rim of the ravine.
Through the swirling snow, she could just make out the shapes of the approaching vehicles. They weren't military. They were civilian. Say again, Viper 6?
Norwegian search and rescue. They picked up our emergency beacon 2 hours ago. Been trying to reach us ever since. Storm's breaking up enough for limited operations. The snowmobiles reached the edge of the ravine. Men in bright orange parkas began descending, carrying stretchers and medical equipment. Elena lowered her rifle.
For the first time in 12 hours, she felt something other than cold and fear. She felt hope.
"Commander," she said, shaking Webb's shoulder. "Commander, wake up. Help is here." Webb's eyes fluttered open. "Ghost, what's happening?" "Norwegians, search and rescue. We're getting out of here." A medic reached them first, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She took one look at Webb's injuries and started barking orders in Norwegian. Within seconds, a team had surrounded them, stabilizing Webb's leg, checking his vitals, preparing him for transport. Another medic approached Elena. "You are injured also, yes?" Elena looked down at herself. She hadn't even noticed the blood soaking through her tactical vest. The fall into the ravine had opened wounds she didn't remember receiving. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You are not fine. You have hypothermia beginning. You have blood loss. You need treatment."
"I need to stay with my commander." The medic gave her a look that transcended language barriers. It was the look of a professional who dealt with stubborn patients every day. "You stay with him, on stretcher, next to him, yes?" Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to stand guard, to keep her rifle ready, to protect Webb until he was safely on a helicopter. But her legs chose that moment to give out completely. She collapsed into the snow, and the last thing she heard before darkness took her was Webb's voice, weak, but somehow amused. "Told you. Should have left me." When Elena opened her eyes again, she was moving. She could feel the vibration of a vehicle beneath her, hear the whine of an engine, sense warmth for the first time in what felt like years. "She's awake." The voice belonged to Torres. Elena turned her head and found the Master Chief sitting beside her. His face haggard with exhaustion, but his eyes bright with relief. "The commander?" Elena croaked. "On the helicopter ahead of us. Norwegian trauma team is working on him. They said he's stable." "Stable?" "He's going to make it, Ghost. Because of you, he's going to make it." Elena closed her eyes. The relief was so overwhelming that it hurt. A physical ache in her chest that had nothing to do with her injury. "How did you find us?"
"We didn't. The Norwegians did. When the storm started breaking up, they launched everything they had. Picked up our beacon, then tracked your position based on the Russian radio traffic you'd been intercepting." The Russians. There were more of them coming. "Were" being the key word. Norwegian military intercepted a mercenary convoy about an hour ago. Turns out when you killed Viktor Volkov, you took out the head of the whole operation. The rest of them scattered like cockroaches when the lights came on. Elena processed this information slowly. Her mind felt like it was wrapped in cotton, every thought taking twice as long as it should. "The team. Is everyone okay?" "Everyone's fine. We moved to support your position as soon as conditions allowed, but the Norwegians beat us to it." Torres paused. "Tex has been asking about you. He wanted me to tell you something." "What?" "He said he was wrong. About everything. He said when we get back to base, he owes you the biggest apology of his life, and probably several beers." Elena almost smiled. "Tell him I'll take the beers. He can keep the apology." The vehicle jolted over rough terrain, and Elena winced as the movement jarred her wounds. Torres reached out and steadied her. "Easy, Ghost. We're almost to the forward operating base. They've got a full medical team waiting." "I don't need a medical team. You've got a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, a through-and-through gunshot wound in your left thigh that you apparently didn't notice, and the early stages of frostbite on 3 fingers. You're getting a medical team, whether you want one or not." Elena looked at her hands. Her fingers were wrapped in warming packs, but she could see the discoloration beneath. She hadn't felt them in hours. "Huh," she said. "I didn't notice." "No kidding." They rode in silence for a while. The vehicle's heater was working overtime, and Elena could feel sensation slowly returning to her extremities. With sensation came pain, spreading through her body like fire. She didn't complain. Pain meant she was alive. "Ghost." Torres's voice was different now, softer, more personal. "What you did out there. I've been a SEAL for 23 years. I've seen acts of heroism that would make your head spin. But I have never seen anything like what you did tonight." "I just did what needed to be done." "No, you did what everyone else said was impossible. You walked into a Category 5 blizzard, alone, against unknown odds, and you brought our commander home. That's not just doing what needed to be done. That's rewriting the definition of what's possible." Elena didn't know how to respond to that. She had never been good with praise, never known how to accept compliments without deflecting or minimizing. So she said nothing. She just lay there, watching the ceiling of the vehicle, thinking about her father. He would have been proud. She knew that with absolute certainty. Wherever he was, whatever came after death, he would have been proud of his daughter tonight. "Master Chief," she said finally, "when we get back to base, I need to make a phone call." "To who?" "My mother. I need to tell her I'm okay. And I need to tell her—" She paused, struggling to find the words. "I need to tell her that I finally understand why Dad did what he did. Why he went out when everyone told him it was suicide. Why he died saving strangers instead of coming home to us." Torres was quiet for a moment. "And why is that?" "Because that's who he was. That's who he chose to be. And tonight, I finally became someone worthy of being his daughter." The vehicle slowed, then stopped. Doors opened, and cold air rushed in along with a flurry of activity. Medical personnel in winter gear surrounded the vehicle, reaching for Elena's stretcher. "Wait!" Elena grabbed Torres's arm. "The commander! I need to see him." "You'll see him at the hospital. Right now, you need treatment." "No, I need to see him now, before they put me under for surgery or whatever they're planning. I need to know he's really okay." Torres looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and spoke to the medical team in rapid Norwegian. Elena didn't understand the words, but she understood the result. They wheeled her stretcher across the compound, through a series of doors, and into a heated medical tent. And there, on a bed surrounded by equipment and personnel, was Commander Marcus Webb. He was pale. He was connected to multiple IV lines. His leg was immobilized in a proper splint, and monitors beeped steadily beside him. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Elena, he smiled. "Ghost, you look terrible. You should see the other guys." Webb laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his injuries. "How many?" "How many what?" "How many of them did you kill to get to me?" Elena thought about it. The guards at the compound, the patrol she had eliminated, the pursuers in the ravine. 17, she said finally. 18, including Volkov. Webb stared at her. 18. You killed 18 men. By yourself. They were between me and you. They shouldn't have been. Ghost. Webb reached out, and Elena took his hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. Alive. Real. I've led SEALs for 25 years. I've trained hundreds of operators, Some of them went on to become legends, but none of them, none, could have done what you did tonight. Commander, I was just... Don't. His grip tightened slightly. Don't minimize it. Don't deflect. What you did was extraordinary. What you did was the single most impressive feat of individual combat I have ever witnessed or heard of. You walked into hell alone and came back with your commander. That's not just heroism. That's legend. Elena felt tears prickling at her eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of her commanding officer. I couldn't leave you behind, she said. I made a promise. Not to you, to my father. I promised him that I would be the kind of person who goes when everyone else says it's impossible. I promised him I would never leave anyone behind. Your father, the Border Patrol agent. You remembered. I remember everything you've ever told me, Ghost. I remember the first day you showed up for training, looking like you were 12 years old and ready to fight the entire world. I remember thinking, this one's going to be special. And I was right. A medical officer approached, clearly impatient to continue Elena's treatment. Torres stood nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Commander, Elena said quickly, before they take me away, I need you to know something. What's that? You gave me a card on my birthday. You were the only one who remembered. You wrote that my father would be proud. Her voice cracked slightly. You were right. I know that now. And I need you to know that you're the reason I became the person I am. You're the reason I was able to do what I did tonight. So thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. Webb's eyes were glistening now. He squeezed her hand one more time before the medical team began wheeling her away. Ghost, he called after her. Elena! She turned her head. When we get back to the States, I'm recommending you for the Navy Cross. And if anyone tries to tell me you don't deserve it, I'm going to show them my leg and tell them to go to hell. Elena smiled. A real smile. The first one in longer than she could remember. Yes, sir. Then the medical team took over, and everything became a blur of bright lights and urgent voices and the sweet, welcome darkness of anesthesia. She dreamed of her father. They were standing on the banks of the Rio Grande, just like they had when she was 9 years old. The water was rushing past, fast and dangerous, and her father was pointing at the current. What do you see, mija? A way through, she said. There's always a way through. Her father smiled. It was the same smile she remembered from her childhood, warm and proud and full of love. That's my girl. That's my brave, beautiful girl. I miss you, Papa. I know, but I'm always with you. Every time you choose to go when others say stop. Every time you refuse to leave someone behind. Every time you find the way through when everyone else sees only impossibility. That's me. That's my legacy, living on in you. I did it, Papa.
I brought him home.
I know you did, and I am so proud of you. He reached out and touched her face. His hand was warm, solid, real. Now wake up, mija. Wake up and live the life you've earned, the life you deserve. Elena woke up. She was in a hospital bed. Real hospital, not a field tent. Clean sheets, proper equipment, the steady beep of monitors. Through a window, she could see mountains in the distance, still covered in snow, but now bathed in pale winter sunlight. The storm had passed. You're awake, her mother's voice. Elena turned her head and found Rosa Vasquez sitting beside her bed, clutching her father's badge in both hands. Mama? They flew me in from Texas. The Navy arranged everything. They said my daughter was a hero. They said she did something impossible. Elena tried to sit up, winced, and settled back against the pillows. How long have I been out? 3 days. The surgery went well. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery, though the physical therapy will take time. The commander? He's fine. He's been asking about you every day. They're going to transfer him back to the States next week." Rosa paused, her eyes filling with tears. "Elena, they told me what you did. They told me everything." "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." "Scare me?" Rosa let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Elena, I spent 14 years being terrified for you. I spent 14 years watching you push yourself harder than anyone should, trying to live up to your father's memory. I spent 14 years praying that you wouldn't end up like him." "I'm sorry. Let me finish." Rosa reached out and took Elena's hand. "I spent 14 years being afraid. And then I got a call from the United States Navy telling me that my daughter had walked into a hurricane to save her commanding officer, that she had fought through impossible odds, that she had brought him home against all probability." "Mama." "And for the first time in 14 years, I wasn't afraid anymore, because I finally understood." Rosa held up the badge, the same badge Elena had worn against her heart for the entire mission.
"Your father would be so proud of you, mija. So proud. And so am I."
Elena finally let the tears come. She had held them back through the storm, through the fighting, through the impossible march through the snow. But now, in this quiet hospital room with her mother beside her, she let them fall.
"I miss him, Mama. Every day I miss him. I know, baby. I know."
They held each other for a long time, crying together for a man who had died 12 years ago, but whose spirit had never really left them. Finally, Rosa pulled back and wiped her eyes.
"There are some people who want to see you. Are you feeling up for visitors?"
"Who?"
"Your team. They've been waiting since you woke up."
Elena nodded, and Rosa went to the door. A moment later, they filed in. Torres, Bull Harrington, Tex Morrison, and the rest of SEAL Team 5, crowding into the small hospital room until there was barely space to breathe. Tex stepped forward first. His massive frame seemed somehow smaller, humbled. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Spectre, I owe you an apology."
"Tex."
"No, let me say this. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. I said you were a liability. I said you couldn't cut it. I said snipers observe and don't rescue." He finally looked up, and Elena was stunned to see tears on the big man's cheeks. "You proved me wrong in every way possible. You showed me what it really means to be a SEAL. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I ever doubted you." Elena held out her hand. Tex took it, his grip gentle despite his size.
"We're good, Tex. We were always good."
"Yeah?"
"Yeah. But you still owe me those beers."
Tex laughed, the sound releasing tension that had been building since she walked into that storm. "All the beers you want, Spectre, for the rest of your life." Bull Harrington stepped forward next. The senior chief's weathered face was serious, but his eyes were warm. "Donovan, I've served with a lot of operators in my time. Some good, some great, a few legendary. You just joined that last category."
"Senior Chief, I was just doing my job."
"No, you weren't. Your job was to wait with the rest of us. Your job was to follow orders. What you did was something else entirely. What you did was refuse to accept the impossible." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "From this moment forward, you have my complete respect and my complete trust. If anyone ever questions whether you belong on this team, they'll answer to me." Torres waited until the others had spoken. Then he sat down on the edge of her bed and looked at her with something like wonder.
"Ghost, I need to tell you something. Something official."
"What's that, Master Chief?" "I've already filed my report. I've recommended you for the Navy Cross, but I want you to know that my recommendation doesn't begin to capture what you did. It doesn't capture the courage,
the skill, the sheer determination. It doesn't capture the fact that you walked into certain death and somehow walked back out. I had good training. You had the same training as everyone else on this team, but none of us could have done what you did. None of us would have even tried. He paused. The commander wants to see you. As soon as you're well enough to travel, he wants to talk to you personally. What about? Torres smiled. That's between you and him, but I have a feeling your life is about to change, Spectre. I have a feeling you're about to become the most famous woman in naval special warfare history. Elena shook her head. I don't want fame. I just wanted to bring him home. I know. That's exactly why you deserve everything that's coming to you. The team stayed for another hour, sharing stories and jokes, and the kind of dark humor that only people who had faced death together could understand. They told Elena about the chaos that had erupted when she went into the storm, about the arguments and the fear and the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, she would succeed. And they told her about the moment when the Norwegian rescue team radioed that they had found her, that she was alive, that she had the commander. Tex actually cried, Bull said with a grin. I did not cry, Tex protested. I had snow in my eyes. It was inside, Tex. Inside a building. Indoor snow. It's a Norwegian thing. Everyone laughed, including Elena. It felt good to laugh. It felt good to be alive, surrounded by people who had become her family. Eventually, the nurses chased everyone out, insisting that Elena needed rest. Rosa promised to return the next day. Torres said he would handle all the paperwork. Bull and Tex argued about who would buy the first round of beers when they got back to base. And then, Elena was alone. She lay in her hospital bed, watching the snow-covered mountains through the window. Somewhere out there, Commander Webb was recovering from his own injuries. Somewhere out there, the story of what had happened was already spreading through the special operations community. Elena didn't care about any of that. She cared about one thing, and one thing only. She reached under her pillow and pulled out her father's badge. The nurses had found it in her tactical vest and returned it to her, understanding somehow that it was important. I did it, Papa, she whispered. I went out, and I came back. The badge gleamed in the pale winter light, and Elena Vasquez, the ghost who walked through hell, closed her eyes and let herself rest. She had earned it. 2 weeks after the rescue, Elena stood outside Commander Webb's hospital room at Walter Reed Medical Center. She had been discharged 3 days earlier, her wounds healing faster than the doctors expected. But the wounds that couldn't be seen, the ones that lived in memory and dream, those were taking longer. She knocked twice. Enter. Webb was sitting up in bed, his legs still in a cast, but his color much improved. Sarah Webb sat beside him, holding his hand, and standing near the window was a woman in Air Force dress uniform, her captain's bars gleaming. Michelle Webb, the daughter Elena had heard so much about. Ghost. Webb's face broke into a genuine smile. Get in here. Elena stepped inside, suddenly feeling awkward. She had faced down 18 armed mercenaries without flinching, but walking into this room full of the commander's family made her palms sweat. Sir, ma'am, Captain. Sarah Webb rose from her chair and crossed the room before Elena could react. The older woman wrapped her arms around Elena in a fierce embrace that squeezed the air from her lungs. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Thank you for bringing him back to me. Elena stood frozen for a moment, unsure how to respond. Then, slowly, she returned the embrace. He would have done the same for any of us, ma'am. I know he would, but that doesn't make what you did any less extraordinary. Sarah pulled back, her eyes glistening. Marcus has told me everything. About the storm, about the compound, about you carrying him through the snow for hours when you should have collapsed. If you say you were just doing your job, I'm going to smack you.
Sarah's voice was firm, but warm. "You saved my husband's life. You gave me 30 more years with him, God willing. That's not a job. That's a miracle." Michelle Webb approached next. She was tall like her father, with the same steady gaze and confident bearing. But there was something else in her eyes as she looked at Elena. Something like recognition. "So you're the famous ghost," Michelle said. "Dad's been talking about you non-stop." "Captain Webb, it's an honor to meet you. Please, call me Michelle, and the honor is mine." She extended her hand, and Elena shook it. "My father trained hundreds of operators in his career. He's never talked about any of them the way he talks about you." Elena glanced at Webb, who shrugged unapologetically. "It's true. You ruined the curve for everyone, Ghost." "Sir, I really don't think—" "Sit down, Elena." Webb's voice shifted, becoming more serious. "We need to talk about something important." Elena sat in the chair Sarah had vacated. The commander's family moved to the other side of the room, giving them space but not leaving entirely.
"What is it, sir?"
"I've been on the phone with some people over the past few days. Important people. People who make decisions about the future of naval special warfare." He paused. "Your name came up. A lot." "In what context?" "In the context of what the hell we're going to do with you." Webb shifted in his bed, wincing slightly as his leg moved. "Ghost, what you did in Norway wasn't just heroic. It was unprecedented. The brass is calling it the most significant individual combat action in SEAL history." Elena felt her face flush. "Sir, that seems like an exaggeration." "It's not. I've seen the after-action reports. I've read the intelligence assessments. Viktor Volkov wasn't just some random mercenary. He was one of the most wanted men in European intelligence circles. He'd been running black operations for Russian interests for 15 years. You didn't just save my life, Elena. You single-handedly dismantled an entire enemy network. I was just trying to get you out, sir. I didn't know anything about Volkov's operation." "I know. That's what makes it even more impressive. You went in blind, with no support, against impossible odds, and you came out on top. The people I've been talking to want to know how. They want to know what makes Elena Vasquez tick." Elena was quiet for a moment. "What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth. I told them that you're the best operator I've ever trained, but that's not why you succeeded. You succeeded because you have something that can't be taught, something that can't be measured or quantified. You have heart, Ghost. The kind of heart that refuses to quit, no matter what. My father, I know about your father. I've known since you joined the team. I read your file." Webb's voice softened. "But Elena, what I saw in Norway wasn't just your father's legacy. It was you. Your choices, your courage, your absolute refusal to accept defeat." The room was silent except for the steady beep of Webb's heart monitor. Elena stared at her hands, processing everything he was saying. "Why are you telling me this, sir?" "Because in about 30 minutes, some people are going to walk through that door. Very important people. And they're going to offer you something that will change your life." "What kind of offer?" "The kind you don't refuse." Before Elena could ask more questions, there was a knock at the door. Webb glanced at his watch and nodded. "Right on time. Come in." The door opened, and 3 people entered. 2 men in Navy dress uniforms, both with enough brass on their shoulders to command a fleet. And 1 woman in civilian clothes, her bearing suggesting something else entirely. "Petty Officer Vasquez," the senior admiral stepped forward. "I'm Admiral Harrison. This is Admiral Chen, and this is Director Morrison from the Joint Special Operations Command." Elena snapped to attention. "Sir, ma'am." "At ease, Petty Officer. This isn't that kind of meeting." Admiral Harrison glanced at Webb. "Commander, how are you feeling?" "Better every day, sir. thanks to the woman standing in front of you. So I've heard. Harrison turned back to Elena. Petty Officer Vasquez, I'll get straight to the point. Your actions in Norway have created something of a situation for us.
Elena's stomach tightened. A situation, sir?
A good situation, Admiral Chen clarified. The kind of situation that forces us to rethink some of our assumptions about what's possible. Director Morrison spoke next. Her voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected national security. Petty Officer Vasquez, how much do you know about SEAL Team 6? Elena's breath caught.
Ma'am?
DEVGRU, Naval Special Warfare Development Group.
The unit that took down bin Laden. The unit that handles the most sensitive operations in the United States military. I know what it is, ma'am. Every SEAL knows what it is. Do you know how operators are selected for DevGRU? Yes, ma'am. Invitation only. Years of experience required. The most rigorous selection process in the military. Morrison nodded. That's correct. The average age of a DevGRU operator is 33. The average time in service before selection is 12 years. No one under 30 has ever been selected. And no woman has ever been invited to try. Elena felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. She knew where this was going, but she couldn't quite believe it. Ma'am, are you saying... I'm saying that Commander Webb has recommended you for DevGRU selection. Admiral Harrison has endorsed that recommendation, and I have approved it. Morrison paused. You're being invited to try out for SEAL Team 6, Petty Officer Vasquez. If you succeed, you'll be the youngest operator and the first woman in the unit's history. The room seemed to spin. Elena reached out and grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. I'm 27 years old. I've only been a SEAL for 3 years. We're aware, Admiral Harrison said. We're also aware that you just accomplished something that most 30-year veterans couldn't do. Your age and experience are factors, yes, but your performance speaks for itself. The selection process is brutal, Admiral Chen added. 6 months of the most demanding training on Earth. Psychological evaluations that will strip you bare. Physical challenges that break operators with twice your experience. We're not making you any promises, Morrison said. The selection process doesn't care about recommendations or endorsements. You'll succeed or fail on your own merits. But you've earned the right to try. Elena turned to Webb. Sir, did you know about this? I recommended it. I've been recommending it for the past 2 weeks, ever since I regained consciousness. He met her eyes. Ghost, I've served with the best operators in the world. I've seen what DevGRU can do. And I'm telling you, right now, that you belong there. You belong with the best. But the selection process, I've heard stories. People who go in healthy and come out broken. That's true. Some people break. But you won't. Webb's voice carried absolute certainty. You walked into a Category 5 blizzard, alone. You killed 18 men. You carried me for 12 kilometers through impossible conditions. The selection process has nothing on what you've already survived. Sarah Webb stepped forward. Elena, can I say something? Of course, ma'am. Marcus has been doing this for 30 years. I've watched him train hundreds of young operators. I've seen him identify talent, nurture it, push it to the limit. And in all those years, I've never seen him fight for someone the way he's fighting for you. She took Elena's hand in both of hers. Whatever you decide, know that you've already proven yourself. You don't need DevGRU to be extraordinary. You already are. But if this is what you want, if this is the path you choose, then take it. Take it and don't look back. Elena looked around the room, at the admirals who had flown across the country to make this offer, at Director Morrison, who represented the highest levels of military authority, at Commander Webb, who had believed in her from the beginning, at his family, who had welcomed her like one of their own. And she thought about her father,
Miguel Vasquez had never had the chance to achieve something like this. His career had been cut short, his potential unrealized. But he had taught her everything she needed to know about what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, to go when everyone else said stop. This was his legacy. This was what all those years of training and preparation had led to. "When does selection begin?" Elena asked. Morrison allowed herself a small smile. 3 months from now. That gives you time to fully recover from your injuries and prepare.
And if I don't make it?
Then you return to SEAL Team 5 with your head held high, having attempted something that 99% of operators never get the chance to try. Admiral Harrison's voice was kind. "There's no shame in failing DevGru's selection, Petty Officer. There's only shame in never trying." Elena took a deep breath. She thought about the storm. She thought about the compound. She thought about carrying Webb through the snow while her body screamed for her to stop. She thought about her father's voice. "You choose to go when everyone else runs." "I'll do it," she said. "I accept." The admirals nodded. Director Morrison extended her hand, and Elena shook it. "Welcome to the next phase of your career, Petty Officer Vasquez. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish." After the brass had left, Elena stood by Webb's bedside. The weight of what she had just agreed to was beginning to settle on her shoulders.
"Sir, what if I'm not ready? What if this is too soon?"
"Ghost, let me tell you something." Webb reached out and took her hand. "When I was lying in that compound, bleeding out, waiting for Volkov to finish his interrogation, I made peace with dying. I truly believed I was going to die in that frozen hellhole. Sir, let me finish. I made peace with it. I thought about Sarah and Michelle. I thought about my career, my choices, my regrets. And then I heard gunshots. I heard explosions. I heard men dying, one after another, and I thought, someone's coming. Someone actually came." His grip tightened on her hand. "When I saw you standing in that doorway, when I realized it was you, alone, covered in blood and ice, I knew something that I'd suspected for 3 years. I knew that you were the future of everything I'd spent my life building. You're not just a good SEAL, Elena. You're the best I've ever seen. And the best deserves to serve with the best." Elena felt tears threatening to fall. She blinked them back. "I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't. You couldn't if you tried." That night, Elena called her mother from her temporary quarters at Walter Reed.
"Mija,"
Rosa's voice was bright with joy.
"how did the meeting go?" "Mama, I need to tell you something. Something big." "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right."
Elena took a deep breath.
"They've invited me to try out for SEAL Team 6, the most elite unit in the military. If I make it, I'll be the first woman ever selected."
The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds.
"Mama, are you there?" "I'm here, Mija. I'm just—"
Rosa's voice cracked.
"I'm trying to figure out how to feel about this."
"What do you mean?"
SEAL Team 6. That's the unit that does the most dangerous missions. The missions that nobody talks about. The missions that get people killed. Mama, your father died doing his duty. He died saving lives. And I've had to live with that loss for 14 years.
"And now you're telling me that you want to go even deeper into that world? That you want to take on even more risk?" Elena closed her eyes. She had known this conversation would be difficult.
"Mama, I understand your fear. I really do. But this is who I am. This is who I've always been. I can't change it, and I don't want to."
"I'm not asking you to change, Mija. I'm asking you to be careful. I'm asking you to come home to me."
"I will, Mama. I promise."
"Your father made me the same promise." The words hit Elena like a punch to the gut. She was silent for a long moment,
struggling to find the right response. "Mama, do you remember what Papa used to say about why he did what he did? He said he couldn't be anyone else. He said helping people was his purpose." "That's right. And it's my purpose too. I know you're scared. I know you don't want to lose me like you lost him. But if I walk away from this, if I say no because I'm afraid, I'm not honoring his memory. I'm betraying it." Rosa was crying now. Elena could hear it in her breathing. "Mija, I am so proud of you. Every day I am so proud of the woman you've become. And your father, wherever he is, he's proud too. I know it." "Then trust me, Mama. Trust me to do this right. Trust me to come home." "I trust you, Mija. I just love you so much. So much it hurts." "I love you too, Mama. More than anything." After she hung up, Elena sat alone in her quarters, holding her father's badge. The metal was warm from her grip, worn smooth by years of handling. 3 months until selection began. 3 months to prepare for the most challenging experience of her life. But first, there was something else she needed to do. She pulled up her laptop and began composing an email. It was addressed to Tex Morrison, Bull Harrington, and the rest of SEAL Team 5. "Team," she wrote, "I need to tell you something before you hear it through official channels. I've been invited to try out for DevGru. I'm going to accept. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'm going to try." She paused, thinking about how to say what came next. "None of this would be possible without you. Not just the rescue, but everything. You pushed me, you challenged me, you made me better. Even when some of you doubted me, even when I had to prove myself over and over, you helped me become the operator I am today." She thought about Tex, who had been her harshest critic and was now one of her biggest supporters. "Whatever happens in the next few months, know that I'm proud to have served with you. SEAL Team 5 will always be my family. You will always be my brothers." She signed her call sign, Ghost. The response came faster than she expected. Within an hour, her inbox was full. From Bull Harrington: "Never doubted you for a second, Spectre. Go show them what a real SEAL looks like." From Torres: "You've earned this. Make us proud. We'll be watching." And from Tex: "If anyone can do it, you can. And when you make it, because you will make it, remember us little people back at Team 5. Beers are still on me. Forever." Elena smiled at her screen. Then she closed the laptop and began to plan. 3 months. 3 months to prepare for the impossible. She had done the impossible once. She could do it again. She would do it again. Because that's who she was. That's who her father had raised her to be. And that's who she would continue to be, no matter how hard the road ahead became. Elena Vasquez, the ghost, the legend still being written, turned off the light and prepared for whatever came next. 6 months later, Elena stood at attention in the pre-dawn darkness at Dam Neck, Virginia. Her body ached in places she hadn't known existed. Her mind had been pushed to limits she hadn't thought possible. And now, after 26 weeks of the most brutal training on Earth, she was about to find out if it had been enough. The DevGru selection cadre stood before the remaining candidates. Out of 42 operators who had started, only 11 remained. Elena was the only woman. Master Chief William Drake, the senior instructor, walked slowly down the line. He stopped in front of Elena and studied her for a long moment. "Vasquez, you know what they called you when you first showed up here?" "No, Master Chief." "They called you a publicity stunt. They said the brass was using you to make headlines. They said you'd wash out in the first week." Elena kept her eyes forward. "I'm still here, Master Chief."
Yes, you are. Against every expectation. Against every prediction. Against every odd. Drake leaned closer. Do you know what they call you now? No, Master Chief. They call you Ghost. Same as your old team. But here, it means something different. It means they can't figure you out. They can't predict you. They throw everything they have at you, and you just keep coming back. He paused. That scares some of them. Permission to speak, Master Chief? Go ahead. Being scared of me is the smartest thing they've ever done. Drake stared at her for 3 full seconds. Then, for the first time in 6 months, he smiled. Damn right it is. He moved to the center of the formation and raised his voice. Listen up. In 6 months, you have been tested in ways that most human beings cannot comprehend. You have been broken down and rebuilt. You have faced challenges that would destroy ordinary operators. And you have survived. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But surviving isn't enough for Dev Gur. We don't want survivors. We want the absolute best. The elite of the elite. The operators who will go where others cannot, do what others dare not, and come back when others would die trying. Elena felt her heart pounding. 6 months of hell had led to this moment. When I call your name, step forward. If your name is not called, you have failed selection. You will return to your previous units with honor, having attempted something that few ever try. The silence was absolute. 42 had started. 11 remained. How many would make the final cut? Anderson, a broad-shouldered operator, stepped forward, his face tight with emotion. Chen, another step forward. Kowalski, Martinez, O'Brien. 3 more. Drake paused. Elena's hands were trembling. She forced them still. Patterson, Rivera, Thompson. 8. 3 more names. Elena counted the remaining candidates. 3 of them. 3 names. Her and 2 others. Williams. The operator next to Elena stepped forward. 2 left. Her and 1 other. 1 name remaining. Drake turned to face the last 2 candidates. His expression was unreadable. The final selection was difficult. Both of you have demonstrated extraordinary capability. Both of you deserve to be here. But we only have 1 slot remaining. Elena's vision narrowed. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, came down to this single moment. Vasquez. She stepped forward. Her legs were shaking, but she didn't fall. Welcome to DevGru. The world seemed to stop. Elena stood frozen, unable to process what she had just heard. She had made it. She had actually made it. The other candidate, a veteran operator named Harris, didn't move for a moment. Then he did something Elena didn't expect. He walked over to her and extended his hand. Congratulations, Ghost. You earned it. Elena shook his hand, still in shock. Harris, I'm sorry. You deserved... I deserved to lose to the best. And I did. He smiled, and there was no bitterness in it. Go make history. The newly selected operators were dismissed to prepare for the graduation ceremony. Elena walked away from the formation in a daze, her mind struggling to catch up with reality. She found a quiet spot behind one of the training buildings and pulled out her phone. Her hands were still shaking as she dialed. Mija? Her mother's voice was thick with sleep. It was barely 5 in the morning. Mama, I made it. I made DEVGRU. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Rosa Vasquez began to cry. Oh, mija. Oh, my brave, beautiful girl. I did it, Mama. I actually did it. I never doubted you. Not for 1 second. Your father, he would be so... I know, Mama. I know. They stayed on the phone for 20 minutes, crying and laughing together. Rosa told Elena about the shrine she had built in her living room. Photos of Elena mixed with photos of Miguel. Candles burning every night for 6 months. "I prayed for you every day," Rosa said. "Every single day. Your prayers worked, Mama." "No, mija, you worked. The prayers just helped." After she hung up, Elena made another call. This one was answered on the first ring. Ghost. Commander Webb's voice was strong and clear. His recovery had been complete. "I heard the news. Congratulations doesn't begin to cover it." "Thank you, sir. I couldn't have done it without you." "That's where you're wrong. You did it entirely on your own. I just pointed you in the right direction." He paused. "I'm proud of you, Elena. Prouder than I've ever been of any operator I've trained." "Sir, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "The graduation ceremony is tomorrow. I'm allowed to invite guests. Will you come?" The silence stretched for a moment. When Webb spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away." The graduation ceremony was held in a secure facility at Dam Neck. The audience was small, limited to family members who had passed rigorous background checks, and senior military officials who oversaw special operations. Elena stood in formation with the other new DevGru operators, wearing her dress uniform for the first time since she had begun selection. The weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders, but she stood tall. In the audience, she could see her mother, clutching a handkerchief and trying not to cry. Beside Rosa sat Commander Webb in his wheelchair, his legs still healing, but his eyes bright with pride. Sarah Webb was next to him, along with Michelle, who had flown in from her duty station specifically for this ceremony. And in the row behind them, to Elena's shock and joy, sat the entire roster of SEAL Team 5. Torres, Bull Harrington, Tex Morrison, all of them in dress uniforms, all of them beaming like proud parents. The ceremony began with remarks from the DevGru commanding officer, a rear admiral whose name was classified, but whose reputation was legendary. "Today, we welcome 10 new operators into the most elite unit in the United States military. These men and women have survived a selection process that breaks 90% of those who attempt it. They have proven themselves worthy of the DevGru Trident. They have earned the right to serve alongside the best of the best." He paused and looked directly at Elena. "Among this class is a historic first. Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez is the first woman ever selected for DevGru. But I want to be clear about something. She is not here because she is a woman. She is here because she is one of the finest operators I have ever encountered. Her selection represents not a lowering of standards, but a raising of expectations. She has shown us what is possible when talent, determination, and courage combine in a single individual." Elena felt tears threatening to fall. She blinked them back, maintaining her military bearing. "At this time, I would like to invite a special guest to present Petty Officer Vasquez with her DevGru Trident. Commander Marcus Webb, please come forward." Elena's breath caught as Webb rose from his wheelchair. His leg was still weak, but he refused assistance, walking to the podium on his own power. Each step was deliberate, determined, a testament to the same stubborn refusal to quit that Elena knew so well. He reached the podium and turned to face her. "Petty Officer Vasquez, front and center." Elena stepped out of formation and approached her former commanding officer. They stood face to face, separated by 2 feet and a lifetime of shared experience. "8 months ago," Webb said, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I was captured by enemy forces in the mountains of Norway. I was injured, bleeding, certain that I was going to die. And then, against all odds, against all probability, against everything that tactical analysis said was possible, a young woman walked into that compound alone and brought me home." His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. Elena Vasquez saved my life. But more than that, she showed me something that I thought I already understood. She showed me what it truly means to be a SEAL. It's not about size or strength or experience. It's about heart. It's about refusing to quit when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to stop. It's about going when everyone else says it's impossible. He reached into a box on the podium and withdrew a gleaming gold trident, the symbol of Naval Special Warfare's most elite unit. This trident represents the highest achievement in special operations. It represents the blood and sacrifice of every operator who has worn it before. And today, it represents something new. It represents the future of what we can become. He pinned the trident to Elena's uniform. The weight of it was slight, but the weight of what it meant was immeasurable. "Welcome to DevGru, Ghost. Make us proud." Elena's voice was steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. "I will, sir. I promise." Webb pulled her into an embrace. Protocol be damned. The audience erupted in applause, a sound that seemed to shake the very walls of the building. When they finally separated, Elena turned to face the crowd. She saw her mother, sobbing openly now. She saw Sarah Webb, clutching her husband's empty wheelchair. She saw Michelle, saluting with tears in her eyes. And she saw her team, her brothers, the men who had doubted her and then believed in her, the men who had pushed her and then celebrated her, the men who would always be her family, no matter where her career took her. Tex Morrison caught her eye and mouthed 2 words. "Told you." Elena laughed, a sound of pure joy that broke through her military bearing. She didn't care. This moment was too big for protocol. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Elena found herself surrounded by people wanting to shake her hand, congratulate her, take photos. Senior officers who had once questioned whether women belonged in special operations now treated her with undisguised respect. But the moment that mattered most came when she finally broke free from the crowd and found her mother standing alone, holding Miguel's badge. "Mama." Rosa looked up, her eyes red from crying, but her face radiant with joy. "I brought something for you, mija. Something I've been saving for a long time." She pressed the badge into Elena's hand. "This belonged to your father. I've kept it safe for 14 years, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. I think this is that moment." Elena looked at the badge. She had carried it with her into Norway. She had held it in her hospital bed. She had touched it every night during selection, when she thought she couldn't go on. "Mama, I can't take this. It's yours." "No, mija. It was his. And now it's yours. You've earned it. You've more than earned it." Rosa cupped Elena's face in her hands. "Your father would be so proud of you. I can feel him, right now, watching us. Watching his daughter become the woman he always knew she could be." Elena pulled her mother into a fierce embrace. They held each other for a long time. 2 women bound by love and loss and the memory of a man who had given everything so that others could live. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, mija. More than words can say." Later that evening, after the reception had ended and the guests had departed, Elena found herself standing on the beach at Dam Neck. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She held both symbols of her journey in her hands, her father's badge in her left, her DevGru trident in her right. "We did it, Papa," she said softly. "We both did it." The wind carried her words away, but Elena felt, somehow, that they had been heard. She thought about everything that had led to this moment, the little girl who had watched her father save lives, the teenager who had stood at his grave and made a promise, the young woman who had pushed herself beyond every limit, the operator who had walked into a frozen hell and brought back her commander. And now, the legend. She didn't feel like a legend. She felt like Elena Vasquez,
daughter of Miguel and Rosa, a woman who had simply refused to give up. But she understood now that legends weren't born, they were made. They were forged in the fires of impossible challenges, tempered by sacrifice, polished by perseverance. They were ordinary people who chose to do extraordinary things. Her father had been a legend, not because of medals or recognition, but because he had chosen to save lives when it would have been easier to save himself. And now, Elena would carry that legacy forward. She would go when others said it was impossible. She would refuse to leave anyone behind. She would be the kind of person her father had raised her to be. The sun dipped below the horizon, and Elena stood alone on the beach. The first woman in Devgru history, the daughter of a hero, the legend they called Ghost. 1 year later, Elena stood before a classroom of new SEAL candidates at Coronado. She was 29 years old now, a chief petty officer with more combat deployments in a single year than most operators saw in a decade. The candidates stared at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Most of them were bigger than her, stronger, more experienced. None of them had accomplished what she had accomplished. "My name is Chief Petty Officer Elena Vasquez," she said. "Some of you know me as Ghost. Some of you have heard stories about what happened in Norway. Most of those stories are exaggerated." She paused, letting that sink in. But here's what isn't exaggerated. The path you've chosen is the hardest path in the military. Most of you will fail. Not because you're weak, but because this job demands something that can't be taught. It demands heart. It demands the willingness to go when everyone else says stop. She walked slowly along the front of the classroom, making eye contact with each candidate in turn. "When I started my SEAL training, I was 5'3", 118 pounds. People told me I was too small, too weak, too female. They said I didn't belong. They said I would wash out in the first week." She stopped and faced them directly. "Those people were wrong, not because I was stronger than they thought. I wasn't. Not because I was faster or smarter or better prepared. I wasn't any of those things. They were wrong because they measured capability by the wrong metrics. They measured size and strength and appearance. They should have measured heart." A young female candidate in the front row raised her hand. "Chief Vasquez, how do you know if you have enough heart?" Elena smiled. "You don't. Not until you're tested. Not until you're pushed to your absolute limit and forced to make a choice. Give up or keep going. That's when you find out who you really are." She thought about the storm in Norway, the compound, the endless march through the snow with Webb on her back. "My father was a border patrol agent. He died saving 5 people from a sinking boat. The last thing he ever said to his crew was, 'We don't leave people behind.' That's the standard I hold myself to. That's the standard I'm asking you to hold yourselves to. Not strength, not speed, not size. Heart. The willingness to sacrifice everything for the person next to you." She walked to the window and looked out of the Pacific Ocean, the same ocean that had claimed her father's life and shaped her destiny. "Some of you will make it through this training. Most of you won't. But I want you to understand something. Whether you become a SEAL or not, you can still live by that standard. You can still be the kind of person who goes when everyone else says stop. You can still refuse to leave people behind." She turned back to face the class. "That's not about wearing a trident. That's about who you choose to be, every single day, in every single moment." The classroom was silent. Every candidate was staring at her with something that looked like reverence. "Any other questions?" No one raised their hand. Elena nodded. "Then let's get to work." That night, after the training day ended, Elena drove to a small cemetery overlooking the ocean.
She walked between the headstones until she found the one she was looking for. Miguel Antonio Vasquez, Border Patrol agent, beloved husband and father. He went out. He didn't come back. But he saved them all. Elena knelt beside the grave and placed a small American flag at its base. "Hey, Papa. It's been a while." The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of salt and sea. "I'm teaching now, training the next generation of operators, trying to pass on what you taught me." She paused. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it right. Sometimes I wonder if I'm living up to your memory." She touched the headstone, feeling the cool marble beneath her fingers. "But then I remember what you always said. You don't leave people behind." "That's what I tell them, Papa. That's what I try to live by every day. And I think maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do." She stood up and looked out at the ocean. Somewhere out there, her father's helicopter had gone down. Somewhere out there, 5 people had lived because he had refused to leave them behind. "I love you, Papa. I miss you every day. But I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm everything you raised me to be." She saluted the grave, a gesture of respect that transcended military protocol. "Rest easy, Papa. I've got the watch now." Elena walked back to her car as the sun set behind her. She was 29 years old. She was the first woman in DevGru history. She had saved her commander's life, earned the Navy Cross, and become a legend that would inspire generations of operators to come. But more than any of that, she was her father's daughter. A woman who chose to go when everyone else said stop. A woman who refused to leave anyone behind. A woman who understood that true heroism wasn't about size or strength or recognition. It was about heart. And Elena Vasquez had more heart than anyone who had ever doubted her could possibly imagine. The SEALs had thought their commander was gone. The legendary female sniper had returned with him, and in doing so, she had proven once and for all that the impossible was just another challenge waiting to be overcome. That was her legacy. That was her truth. And that was the story that would be told for generations to come. Not because she was extraordinary, but because she had chosen to be. And that choice, in the end, was what made all the difference.